Welcome to the Home Care Experience with T&A, where industry insiders Amy Taylor and Troy Brooks bring real talk and real expertise to the world of caregiving. In this episode, Amy and Troy take a deep dive into one of hospice's most misunderstood challenges, the hospice cap. Whether you're a seasoned provider or new to hospice, this conversation breaks down how the cap works, why it's so easy to get blindsided, and what you need to watch out for to stay financially sound. From Medicare overpayments to patient transfers and documentation pitfalls, this is an essential listen for anyone navigating hospice compliance. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Home Care Experience with T&A. I got Troy Brooks and I'm Amy Taylor, and today we're going to talk about hospice cap.
Yeah, I get a lot of clients who call with hospice cap issues, and I know very little. I know a few things about them, but the clients that I have who run across them and are, shocked by them at the end of the day are clients who are new to the hospice industry. They may be nurses who have opened a hospice because they know how to provide the care and they know how to handle that end of the documentation. But on the administrative side, there's a whole nother world. Tell us a little bit how hospice caps work.
Okay. I'll keep it at a high level so we can keep it, within reason. And
pretend you're talking to somebody who can't count.
Okay.
Like
all
for
right.
real.
For real, can't count. I already got it. That's easy.
You're talking to me.
And we do have a resource we could bring in for a much deeper dive. If need be, that's all he does is cap monitoring. But that makes sense that it's new providers because I see the same thing. New providers come in. But let's go over it in a nutshell. So Medicare needed to somehow put some restraints on the hospice benefit, but they had to be very careful how they did it. They didn't want it to be perceived by the public that Troy Brooks, you're only allotted $30,000 lifetime benefit for hospice, which these are very, very rough numbers, but that covers about 6 months of care. And so instead of doing it like that, they called it an aggregate cap. And so what they do is they say, all right, each patient, each hospice, each Medicare beneficiary gets a lifetime cap of $30,000 roughly, but it's counted in aggregate. So it's not assigned to Troy Brooks, right? It's assigned to your clientele population, your patient population. So you admit a patient, patient one comes on, you get $30,000 put into your bucket. So think about a bucket. Somebody explained it to me a while back, and they did a visual image, and they said, think about like an old water tower, and that's like elevated, it's on little stilts, and it's got a little spigot, and it's got the top, and the top is where you put everything in. So a new admit comes in, and you get $30,000 kind of credit in your bucket. And then every day that patient's on service, it's draining out there's a little daily drip. And so the daily rate's $150 a day, roughly, just real easy numbers. So for every patient, your bucket, your credits are getting big, and then it's draining out by days of service provided. So when you have a patient that stays on for like a year, you've spent all of their $30,000. You've been reimbursed their $30,000, and then Medicare keeps reimbursing you because they're not going to shut it off because it's not assigned to patient A. But you need patient B, C, and D to come in and only use up 2 months, 2 weeks, 3 months. You need short-term patients because even if they're on service and they expire, we'll use proper terminology here, sir. When they expire,
you can use the word die.
When they die, you still get the full $30,000 benefit.
Okay.
Now, it gets really complicated when they start transferring to other agencies.
That's where I think people run into problems is they don't understand that when you have someone who transfers in from another agency, it affects your budget.
Yes. So we'll get to that in a minute. So now you've got, you added a patient and they died very quickly. Well, you still have, say you've got that year-long patient and you bring in your patient number 2 and they only last a week. You now have 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've kind of covered, 2 $30,000 credits. So now you've your long-term patient. But so it's just a balance of long-term and short-term patients. But it is applied per agency. And so if you don't balance that out, then what Medicare does, let me think about this. How do I put it simply? They look at your census. They take your census times the aggregate cap, which is now it's like 34,000 and some change. And then they compare that to how much you've been reimbursed during that fiscal period. And there's a special PSNR you run for it. By the way, this is Medicare and Medicare only patients, traditional Medicare. And so then that either calculates you owe them, you have excess cap, or you have a cap overpayment. And so if you have an overpayment, then you got to pay it back to Medicare. And that's what's getting people.
Yeah.
And the part about transferring is that credit gets prorated by days of service on every agency they've ever been on. So if it's a fresh admit and they've never been in a hospice before, you're clean from that end. But then you've got to watch your live discharges, because you took credit for the full 30,000. Then they discharge, let's say they discharge in 8 months and they go somewhere else and they spend another 6 months over there. Well, then that agency gets half of their credit. So let's say 6 months on your service, 6 months on somebody else's service. So your $30,000 credit just got cut in half because half the credit went to another agency. And this goes on for years. They will recalculate your cap position for like 3 years back. So you might get a cap overpayment for 2021. We are currently in January of 2025. And they usually do the cap overpayments, especially the reassessed years, come out in the fall. And so you might have gotten an original overpayment for fiscal year 21 back in like fall of 22. That was a big one. Say you owed $1 million, not unheard of by any means. Well, then the next year you get a follow-up. Oh, you owe another 30,000. Well, it's because people moved and they prorated it even more.
Okay.
And then year 3 rolls around and you get another overpayment letter. And it's like, now you owe 10,000. It just keeps going when those patients stay on for 2 or 3 years.
Well, anytime you have a long length of stay patient, home health, hospice, pediatrics, PASO, those are different. But with Medicare certified home health and hospice, if you have a long length of stay patient, once that patient reaches a certain in home health, once they reach a certain episode, once they get past the first episode or maybe the second episode, and with hospice, once they get past that first day, you need to really pay attention to your documentation to justify why they're on there, or else you're looking at some point, if you're ever audited, a billing audit or anything, you're going to be paying money back on that end. This is separate and apart from the cap.
And that would be, what would you term that? Is that medically necessary?
Real medical necessity. Yeah. It comes up in hospice a lot. There are even Texas, in Texas Health and Human Services Commission for Medicaid, they will do for Medicaid only patients, will do utilization reviews.
Yeah.
And they look for outliers. And outliers would be people with long lengths of stay. And so it's just another, when you're running a home care business and you're paid on stays or episodes, and the idea is, one, the patient is either supposed to die within or they have a life expectancy of 6 months or less, or in home health where it's supposed to be intermittent Medicare, skilled nursing care. You need to really pay attention. It's just prudent this is just one more reason why it's prudent to pay attention to long lengths of stay, monitor it, know your census.
Yeah. And that's the biggest indicator. And so for us, all of our hospice clients, we show them their average length of stay. Well, we pull it out of the EMR system. I will give caution. There are some, and maybe they've got it fixed. I will say Kinser Hospice was the worst, that the average length of stay was nowhere near accurate. It would say like 260 days on somebody that's never had a cap issue. So that's obviously not right. I don't know where they were pulling their numbers, but we try to get.
And Cancer's a reputable provider. I mean,
used to be.
Okay.
They've lost it. People have jumped ship, but I'm not here to bash cancer. I
was trying to give you an opportunity not to, but you can't help yourself.
I'm not going to lie either.
Well, no, I appreciate that.
But that we do. We look at that average length of stay, and if you start getting that to 180 days, even close to it, you need to really start watching what you're doing.
So what is the most common driver of a cap overpayment? Is it the length of stay, or is it transfers? Or is it both?
That's a good question.
It may vary from client hospice to hospice. Like a new one who starts up, they bring in a bunch of new transfers from other hospices, or someone who purchases hospice, they bring in to build their census quickly. They transfer people in.
I really think it's longer length of stay. Probably. I could be wrong, but I think so. The way I look at it, that's cash flow for especially a new agency. They don't want to start discharging patients because they haven't built up their census yet. So that's part of it.
I think you're probably right, because we're talking about hospices who have been in operation for a long time. I mean, the number of years, the length of stay thing would apply in that case, because hopefully if they've been in operation for several years, they're not inundated with transfers.
Right.
As a competitor or a similar size, a large hospice were to close
or something.
Honestly, and if you do have a lot of, you need to be careful with transfers. Where are they coming from? How do they get to you? That kind of thing. And that's something you need to be careful with, the referral sources, because that in and of itself could be another red flag, which is another topic altogether.
Yeah. You know what's interesting to me about this is that, so we're talking about patients staying on too long on hospice, but then there's a complete opposite phenomenon in hospice also, where there are still so many people in the population that don't understand that benefit and don't utilize it.
If they don't, or they utilize it just
at the very end, at the last few days. So we had a friend just recently, mom, 86, riddled with cancer. They were talking about what to do with her. And they said, we will call in hospice when it gets bad. And I said, no. Call in hospice now. Don't wait till it gets bad. And it was funny because then the family met with hospice and they came back to me and said, oh, well, we didn't know that actually this is the right time to call them in, and they do this, and that. And it's been so great. And I said, okay, we're doing a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
So I already have a buddy to come in for that. That's in the industry, but there's so much education needed because they'll wait. And honestly, I think his mom, another interesting, totally off topic, but I love it. It gives me goosebumps. So they get her home from the hospital.
We have a tendency to ramble. Just bear with us.
Yeah. Get her home from the hospital and she starts improving. And they're like, wow, mom's having good days. And I was like, yep, that's what happens.
Okay. Good, consistent nursing care a terminal patient's quality of life will improve. And that is one of the battles I have when dealing with an eligibility issue. And do they meet the medical necessity for hospice? Will they come on and all of a sudden they start doing better? Well, they're getting good care.
Yeah.
And, you can't really fault my folks for giving good care.
Yeah.
But I have had a couple of personal experiences with hospice, and I was just really glad I had the experience, the industry experience, but sitting in the chair is a different matter. With one, my friend was only able to go to hospice really in the last few days. When she was actively dying, she got admitted to Houston Hospice, and they were wonderful. The thing that people don't understand is hospice doesn't take care of just the patient. They deal with the family too.
Yeah.
And her sister had come down because she was dying. My friend was dying, and she has so many questions that had they been on hospice before already, that would have been answered. Now with my grandmother, to be honest with you, come from the Florida Panhandle, and Holmes County, Florida, smallest county in Florida. I think there's less than 20,000 people there now. I was personally worried about how the hospice was going to talk to my uncles, who were like my grandmother's primary caregivers at the time, because country people are just different and they don't like people getting up in their business. And so, but they handled it well. And I was just really pleased with that. And with the Texas Association for Home Care and Hospice, we have had sessions in the past on cultural diversity and how to approach different people. So I think you're going to see a lot more push towards hospice with that organization. Of course, we also have the Texas New Mexico Hospice and Palliative Care Organization in Texas, and of course the national organization. Yeah. So it's a beautiful benefit. What you're talking about with the caps makes sense.
We got way off track.
We did, but I was trying to bring us back. I mean, well, I'm good at gut roping. If you're not from Texas, I may have to explain that at some point. Well, maybe we do a little one of those post notes on that one. But so the cap is intended basically to level out a hospice's bucket
and to discourage taking long-term patients that really are not appropriate for hospice.
Here's the thing that kills me. For that discouragement or deterrent to work, you have to know the industry. You have to know you have to be able to maneuver in the industry. You have to be able to analyze it. So that's the problem I see people have is they may have had nursing experience and they may be good-hearted, but unless you have that business, it's a very specific type of healthcare business experience to sort of you have a lot of factors your way.
There are a lot of moving parts.
That's where home care financial comes into play. They're really good at helping you with that.
Yeah, we're good at helping you try to avoid caps. We don't do any monitoring, but we have a firm that does that. I like working with him. He's easy to work with.
Well, the thing from my experience with hospice, and again, I know a lot about home health and hospice. I don't know if I could run an agency. I was a president of a federally qualified healthcare center once. I was a volunteer part-time job because it was a big organization, and there was a lot of detail. I mean, it's very detail. You have to be very detail oriented, not prone to goat roping, but what I've been fascinated with is that people who are veterans in the industry are very attuned to balancing all of these different factors just very naturally. Yeah, and experience helps.
Experience helps. And I think what I would tell new providers is you may not know what you don't know yet, but somebody's got to educate these new providers on these cap overpayments because they will put you out of business. And the other thing,
I've seen healthy agencies close.
Yeah. And if you're making a lot of money and you look real healthy, then you need to check your cap. That's something else I see, especially a newer agency. If, the gate might be closed. Okay.
We're not waiting on a pizza delivery. Okay. Just to let you know.
So if you've got, especially a young agency, if they're rocking and rolling, it worries me when they're in year 2, year 3, if they've got a cap problem. Because in that first year, it's kind of hard to get a cap problem. But if you just take a whole bunch of long-term patients, by year 2, you're going to have a cap problem from year 1 that surfaces.
Now, the other thing we were talking about with monitoring the cap, there are so many other reports that come about through the regulatory system for hospice that feeds into that. That's sort of what I was talking about, people juggling all these factors. But I have just, for me as a professional, it is enjoyable when I work with someone who has a handle on all those factors and to, when I sit in the committee meetings for TAC, listening to them talk and they juggle all these factors. And it's just, I don't know. I was on the enforcement side when I worked for the predecessor to HHS, Texas Health and Human Services Commission. So I saw a lot of shady stuff. So it's nice to see people trying to do things right and trying to grow a very healthy business authentically, genuinely. And we have there are a lot of them in the hospice industry that are that way. Yeah,
that I find, and this is no dig on the home health, but I find the hospice people, it's just a different breed. It takes a different breed of people to care for those that they know are dying instead of being curative, but being palliative or, you're making them comfortable. I remember early on in my career, there was a guy I worked with out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he was a business guy and he felt real dirty making money off of dying people. And he had to reconcile that. And
I reconcile to the fact that I make money off of people's griefs all day long. I mean, I have no problem with it at all. It spins fine. Well, we'll be talking more about the hospice cap.
Yeah.
I mean, because it is a big area. And honestly, I would say from where I sit, people coming to me needing help, the hospice cap is one of the biggest areas, especially for new hospices or newly purchased hospices.
Yeah. 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 And if it's newly purchased, they need to watch what they're buying because they may come with
there's
it.
also, well, there are ways to deal with that. I mean, people freak out about it, but there's tons of ways to limit your liability to one. I mean, as long as you look under the hood, just don't go around kicking the tires when you buy something. And so
we're doing a whole episode on that.
Yeah. But it's I lost my train of thought. As my friend used to say, I lost my dog. That train of thought derailed.
Sorry.
So anyway, but anyway, something worth going back into. Hospice cap is a major component. One of the biggest struggles, that and medical necessity. Mm-hmm. Those are two biggest struggles I deal with in hospice, and they're tied together. They're part of a bigger component. Of course, hospice now is under a ton of scrutiny.
Yes.
They now have a 36-month rule, so they joined that club, and it's a different ball game, and it's going to evolve into a different ball game.
Yeah.
It's just continuously evolving.
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to grow. And I think the more public education we get out there, the more it will grow. But I think the scrutiny is not going to slow down anytime soon.
I agree.
So, yeah. All right. Well, it's been good.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. And stay tuned in the future for more information on hospices and hospice caps. And again, that is one of my favorite benefits and programs because there's a beauty in it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for joining us on the Home Care Experience with TNA. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found it insightful. You can find more episodes of the Home Care Experience wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We'd love it if you could share this podcast with your network and/or leave us a review. It really helps us reach more people who are passionate about home care and hospice. Visit thehomecareexperience.com for links and resources in the show notes. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference in the lives of those you serve.